Good evening. This is Felipe Osorio. Welcome to Second Earth Alternative. So this is a bit of a different episode. I wanted to talk a little bit about the death of Kobe Bryant. And, I just want to give all my condolences to everybody who really, first of all, to the family members, to everybody who's very close to Kobe. And, of course, all the viewers. And what I mean by that is the sports fans, the people who had watched this man defy a lot of conventions in sports to essentially make himself into something of a legend in sports. And I know there's a lot of fans that are absolutely heartbroken. I know I almost kind of got myself into tears watching Kobe Bryant's, some of his more memorable games, like his last game where he scored 60 points. And this is coming from a Warriors fan. So what I want to do is go over an idea of what may have transpired during the flight, that fateful crash. And this is something that we posted on Twitter on January 30th. And about a week later, I saw an article that seemed to confirm some of the ideas that we're proposing. Now, of course, this flight is still under investigation. And so this saying it's going to be like 12 to 18 months before they figure out what's really going on. But maybe there is some clues as to what may have happened that we can go over right now. So I can just start off this episode by showcasing the tweet that I went ahead and posted. And to be honest with you, I don't even know if anybody saw this tweet. It doesn't really matter. I just want to showcase it more so to talk about the theory behind this potential crash. So in a tweet it says here, "I'm a certified drone pilot living in LA. Saw that fog. Visibility was abysmal. Did a clearing of the fog, less thick layer cause sudden drop as chopper was already churning. The chopper would need more power after clearing the layer. Was fog fast moving?" So what I was indicating on this January 30th post is that this chopper, despite it being a high impact crash, I think they said it crashed like at 180 miles per hour, that I didn't think it was a mechanical failure. And the reason why I didn't think it was mechanical failure is, for one, I want to showcase to you where I live. Please don't go visiting my house. I'm not gonna show you the exact house. I'm just showing the general area. So in the general area, I live in West Hollywood. The crash happened right over here in Calabasas. So you can see that I literally live within the same mountain range that the crash happened. And what I can tell you about that crash is I was out there earlier and my wife had called me over to take a look at the fog. I mean, I've been in LA for over a decade, and honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a fog that has been, how do you say it, that thick, that different from the outside air. It was something that you would almost see in a movie, like a Stephen King movie, because the fog was so abnormally thick, so unusual that particular night. So I can personally attest, living only a few miles away from the crash, that the fog surrounding the area was unusually thick. I want to show you what the article published about a week later mentioned. And it says here on US News, published February 7th, Bryant's helicopter was 100 feet from clear skies. So as I was indicating in the tweets, did a clearing of the fog, less thick layer, cause sudden drop as chopper was already churning? So why am I saying this? Why did I believe that this helicopter had crashed due to it nearly clearing the fog? Well, let's read further here. A witness to the deadly crash of a helicopter carrying Kobe Bryant and 8 others said it sounded normal just before slamming into a hillside, and wreckage examined by experts at the scene showed no signs of engine failure, federal investigators said in a report released Friday. The January 26 crash occurred in cloudy conditions, and aviation experts said the investigative update from the National Transportation Safety Boards reinforces the notion the pilot became disoriented and crashed while trying to get clear skies. The veteran pilot, Zobayan, came agonizingly close to finding his way out of the clouds. He told aircraft controller he was climbing to 4,000 feet. He ascended to 2,300 feet, just 100 feet from what camera footage later reviewed by NTSB showed was the top of the clouds. So one last thing it says here, his final transmission said he was going to climb above the clouds. 8 seconds after reaching the peak altitude, he started the fateful descent. So I think what a lot of experts are trying to figure out is why would a helicopter, something that was supposed to be very safe, this particular helicopter is said to be the Lincoln of helicopters, at least for charter flights, why would a helicopter suddenly descend at such a high speed? And why would the pilot, somebody with this much experience, have been flying so quickly during the clouds? And it says here, sea fog drawn inland over a cool land surface along the west coast are two prime examples of so-called advection fog. So when you do analyze the actual area, what's kind of interesting is that the area lies right next to the ocean, and generally these type of fogs, sea fogs, they do run from west to east. That's exactly the direction of the fog that I witnessed that night as well. Now, the meaning of this tweet is basically this. I'm gonna just kind of draw it out for you guys so you guys can see what's going on here. Let's say you have your chopper right over here. Okay, here's its little tail. Okay, so if the chopper is trying to lift up and then you have a thick layer of cloud, well, one thing that we learned in the aviation courses that I took in order to be able to get piloted as a drone pilot is that in these fog-like scenarios, you have multiple things happening. First of all, you have colder air, which means there's more air molecules condensed together, as well as water droplets, both which are going to contribute to making the air a lot more thick and a lot more stable for any type of flight, whether you're talking about rotor flight or even an airplane flight. You just have a lot more stable, thicker air in the foggy, patchy region. So right before the crash, this helicopter was attempting to ascend to get out of this fog. You know, having looked at the fog that night, I can tell you that the visibility would have been almost nil. I mean, relatively speaking, for a helicopter pilot that was not flying through, you know, this is another thing. The pilot was not using instruments. He was actually piloting using visual signals. It said the charter company was specifically licensed to only allow visual flight only charter flights. So though the pilot could fly theoretically with instruments only, it wasn't legal. But let me show you something what's going on here on Google Earth. So I went ahead and I triangulated the exact positioning of the crash itself. And just to back up to give you a perspective of the entire map over here. So as the airplane started circling this area, the aircraft controller apparently asked the helicopter to turn south. Now, it is at this moment that the chopper was attempting to not only turn south, but also get out of the cloud clearance. And I'm wondering if it's this combination of maneuvers that created the very dangerous scenario that created the fateful crash. And now, if you were to go exactly where the crash happened, which is just around these hills, what I find kind of interesting is, let's see if we can get really down into the ground to see what's going on here. Look how hilly and how sharp some of these hills are. But what I'm thinking here is you got an air pilot who's trying to lift off the ground, is in a very thick, stable air, thick, stable layer of fog. Is it possible that upon breaking the peak of the fog, this area right here, that the pilot suddenly encountered less dense air, a warmer flow? When you have clear air, it might sound counterintuitive, that is more turbulent air. A chopper of any kind or any kind of rotor vehicle would require a lot more, power to stay afloat. So if this chopper were to suddenly get into a region that required a lot more power to sustain its lift, and then let me show you what's happening here. So the pilot is following the freeway over here, and it starts churning, but the moment that it churns, if you kind of look at the terrain, if the pilot were to have fallen anywhere in between this crevice, to me it seems like a very easy place, especially in a cloudy environment, to get disoriented. And if you were to look right, well, that looks like a huge obstacle. So imagine a chopper that suddenly lifts off this cloudy layer to an air that becomes a lot more unstable. The chopper is already kind of churning. So upon churning, what I'm thinking is when he saw this big mountain, because the craft had probably dropped upon clearing the layer, upon seeing this, he's like, uh-oh, banks left, thinking that he's gonna be in a clear because the mountain is in his right, only to encounter the area of the crash. So what I'm saying basically is that there were multiple things that could have taken place. One of them was visibility. The other one was the density of the air, which upon clearing the fog might have created a very unstable air that the helicopter may not have had enough power to stay afloat. And so you got to imagine that a helicopter starts banking left. Suddenly, if it doesn't have enough power, it's probably going to start churning a little bit too strongly, which could explain perhaps the high impact crash and the inability for the helicopter to gain control. And then the third variable would be the off chance that when you do enter the fog and then suddenly your helicopter drops because you don't have enough power, that you suddenly end up being in this crevice. A crevice where even in clear daylight, looking at Google Earth, it's already very disorienting, just kind of twisting myself around this area. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there might have been three factors that together contributed to what was a crash due to pilot mistake. Meaning you have low visibility, the inability to fly the craft through instruments, you have the density air issue, and then lastly you have the helicopter just happening to land in an area that is visually very confusing. And I would imagine that he was probably trying to stay away from this mountaintop and banked left, and having not enough torque in the rotors, just ended up banking right into the hillside. Now, the investigation is going to take 12 to 18 months. I'm only commenting on this because the article seems to have confirmed some of the ideas that we posted on Twitter. And for those who might want to know what happened to Kobe Bryant or wants to talk about different ideas of what could have happened, well, here's one possibility, here's one opinion that we think is, at least at this point, somewhat probable that something to this effect could have happened in that very tragic, fateful night. So that about wraps it up. Thank you for joining me. This is Felipe Osorio, signing out.